You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
Oh, the reallocation of the funds?
Yeah.
There's a lot to digest.
Yeah, this is,
I'm not saying we have to, I'm just saying as a consideration, let's encourage the rather than saver, so let's look at how to deal with him.
Looks like somebody's going to eat it.
Right, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm gonna get started here.
all right.
All right, we're gonna get started for the Board of Finance meeting, Town of Brantford, regular meeting for January 27th, 2020. First on the agenda is to approve the minutes of the November 25th, 2019 meeting.
I'll be happy to approve those.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Second is citizens' communications, citizens' comments. We ordinarily set aside a few minutes for folks who would like to comment on tonight's agenda. Do I have any takers? With none, we will go to agenda item number 3, to consider and if appropriate, approve a request from the Human Resource Director for the following 2020 budget transfer on behalf of the tax collector from contingency $35,400 into consulting services $35,400. Welcome, Margaret.
Thank you, Jim.
First, I'd like to know what our contingency balance is there, Mr. Jim.
Yes, taking into account tonight's agenda, the balance would be $857,969.
969, Jim?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And
Thank you. As many of you are aware, our tax collecting department is composed of an elected tax collector, an assistant tax collector, a tax associate, and occasionally we get some additional help, part-time help from finance when needed. Our assistant tax collector, who's been in the role for about 4 years now, is retiring February 28th, and we have been actively looking for a replacement for her. As you can appreciate, this is an important position because it's a number 2 experienced level individual that we will need to replace her. And we have not come, unfortunately not come up with a candidate that matches the position from experience as well as cost. So with Jim and Catherine and Jamie's assistance, we've formed a little task force, internal task force, to put together how we might be able to resolve this immediate concern. And we fortunately found the tax collector of New Haven, who is retiring, is available to work with us on a consulting basis. This will allow us to promote the tax associate into the assistant tax collector position and have our consultant, experienced tax collector, train the tax associate. And that will provide us also with a credited individual on staff. And we feel this is an important process that we need to go through. First of all, to retain our tax associate, provide a promotional opportunity for her and a learning one. And then at the second time, we're fortunate as a town to have an experienced tax collector from another town come work with us and train our new staff. And this would be for a short period of time. And that's why we're asking for the contingency.
thanks, Margaret. And so now, are there any accredited tax collectors on staff?
No, we have both parties, both persons, the elected tax collector, of course, and the tax assistant associate are being, going through the process of accreditation, which is a 3-year process. So it's extensive and long. You have to pass.
And how far are they along on that?
Over 2 years for the tax collector and about the same for the tax associate.
Margaret, the tax consultant
will come in 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 5 days a week?
Yeah.
What's the,
We'd like there's some other things as far as training going on in that department. We'd like her to come in full-time, not as an employee, as a consultant, Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week.
for $35,000?
Sorry?
For the $35,000?
Yes, that's correct,
Remaining of
35,000.
the fiscal year.
This will go, get you
Oh, the
through June
remainder of
30th?
fiscal year,
June 30th,
okay.
yes.
And Wendy, how long do you expect to maintain that person in that capacity?
Well, we'll probably look into, as this goes forward, we'll probably include some funds for the next fiscal year in the budget request, so possibly another 3 months beyond
Yes,
that?
absolutely.
3 months into the fiscal year?
So, but we need to have one accredited, right? Is that correct?
Well, there is, this, as I understand it, the regulations, you don't have to have one accredited. You have to have one in the process of accreditation.
Okay.
And I think we're moving forward, especially based on the way the candidate pool is at this mid-level experience level. It's very difficult to find someone. So I think we're going to be in the right position ourselves to get us there very fast.
Charlie had a question.
The 35-4, how long is that going to last?
It'll take us till June 30th.
It will, okay.
And you're comfortable with the non-employee status?
I'm absolutely comfortable with it. I'm very cautious about those statuses.
Okay, other questions?
I'll move it.
Moved by
I'll second it,
Bob,
Joe.
Seconded by Jeff. Additional discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Next is to consider and if appropriate approve a request from the town planner for the following budget transfer from regular wages, $12,000, into consulting services, $12,000. Welcome, Harry.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So as you may be aware, we're going through some staffing changes, or actually more accurately, half of the changes, hopefully. Our assistant planner, Rich Stecker, retired after about 13 years of service to the town. And our zoning enforcement officer, who came from the Inland Wetlands Office, recently returned there to take up a position as the director of the office. So out of a 4-person department, we're down to myself and the administrative assistant at the moment. So we do have a part-time person filling in for the zoning enforcement officer. And we have, with the money I had in the consulting budget, which is pretty limited, $5,000, hired a part-time planning and engineering firm to provide some services 1 day a week. I think we're going to need a little more than that time period that the $5,000 will cover. We're only actually going to cover about a month of services plus a little bit. So we're proposing to swap $12,000 over from the salaries budget, which is not being spent, into consulting to allow us to pay back the $5,000 the consulting budget, plus extend that period a little bit until we have a new assistant planner hopefully on board. So that's really it in a nutshell.
Okay, questions?
Yeah. So you're in the process of looking for that individual?
But we are actively in
Yes.
the process of looking, yeah.
Charlie?
Do I interpret the 12 to mean 1,000 a month for 3 months? I mean,
it's
3,000 a month?
It's $4,000 a month for 3 months.
Okay, so, right, 4,000 a month. Okay, and that'll pay for both?
That'll pay for just the planning consultant.
Okay, the zoning enforcement is a
That-
volunteer?
Yeah, that's coming right out of the salaries account. it's my
Okay.
understanding.
Yeah, that'll probably have to be reconciled with a part-time, it's being filled by a part-time employee right now. But, so this is just for the consultant on the plan
Okay.
review, for filling the role of the assistant planner.
Oh, is that Bud Becky?
But
Bud
Becky's
Beck
doing
is
the
the
zoning enforcement
Yeah,
officer,
right.
yeah, it was retired from
Okay.
North Branford. and he's,
I'll move it, Joe.
Been moved by,
I'll second
by Bob, seconded by Victor. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Harry. Take care. Next is to consider and if appropriate approve a request from the Parks and Open Space Authority for the following budget transfer for fiscal 2020 from Open Space Patrol, $13,700, into capital outlay improvements, $13,700. Hi, Rich.
Hello.
Rich?
Welcome.
Thank you. This project, we'd like to develop or improve a parking area up on Laurel Hill Road that hopefully is going to allow the upper areas of the Pisgah Preserve, Queech property more accessible, to get a little bit more people up there walking and hiking, and hopefully alleviate some of the usage and parking problems we're having in the main supply pond areas, just to get people moving up into the northern area. Access is a big problem. People don't know where to park and what have you. And we feel that by just putting down some gravel and making this more of a access point, it's going to help alleviate the situation. And so to do so, we're looking to move some money that's currently available in the Open Space Patrol and moving that over to the capital outlay improvements.
What's the balance in the Open Space Patrol now?
Right now, it's $26,569.
Yeah, I think you were talking about the fund or the account?
The fund, the account, Jim. It's coming where it's coming out of? Open Space Patrol,
Yeah, that is the right number then. Okay.
26,000?
Yeah,
Okay.
89 or something like that. Yeah.
That was a position that was, that the person that occupied it passed away. We have not filled it.
Okay.
Looking at that position for possibly other.
So what are we doing for patrol now?
Right now, that's being taken care of by the seasonal and part-time help. There's somebody
Okay.
else that is part-time. Since we didn't fill the patrol position, we're giving this other person more hours. And so he's been filling in sort of both, if you will.
And just to recap, you have various, obviously it's Supply Pond, it's Pisgah Brook that they patrol, it's the Young's Pond.
It's not so much Young's Pond. The area here is right, Pisgah Brook, Supply.
No, I understand that, but the patrol itself covers more than just that one.
Absolutely. It's the Kaczynski property and Beacon Hill.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure of the other ones right now.
Okay. Questions, Charlie?
Young's Pond was not part of that, Joe. They
Not
had
part of the patrol
No, they
anymore?
had a separate.
They have their own.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Like you said, the property is owned by the Branford Land Trust.
This is up on, I don't know if you're familiar with Great Hill Road. It's an abandoned town road right at the corner of Laurel Hill. So we're going to be utilizing and improving part of the town road. We're about 200-300 feet. And then that's going to go down to the land trust property, which they call the DeLeo property. And they're in agreement.
Because they don't encroach on the Branford Land Trust?
They're part of all of it. They're on board with all of this.
Okay.
So I think your point is, I think this is on Land Trust property, is that correct?
The parking area is the
But do we need a
road.
contract with them for the town to enter their property? Or
I-
put something in their property?
I don't believe so. I've had
So
several.
they operate under the umbrella of the town?
No, I think the point here is that there's an Old Town Road that goes through there.
Yeah.
And then that leads to the Pisgah property. And-
Correct.
And the Great Hill Road is the road, the Old Town Road that goes
That's
through
been
there.
abandoned.
Right.
On that, to the left there, or to the north, is where the parking lot's gonna go. Now, who owns that property that the parking lot's gonna go on?
That's the Branford Land
The
Trust.
Land Trust, that's your question.
Yes, all right.
Right.
Do we need permission from them to go on?
They haven't given us, written permission, but I've been to several meetings with them.
So
And
your
they've been at the
request is
property. We've
Well, I don't know, I mean, don't you think?
No,
we
I
need
think- I don't
a
disagree.
contract to enter onto somebody else's property?
I think there's a common partnership there, but it's probably a good idea to get something in writing, that's they grant the town permission in some fashion. The town attorney can work with the first selectman's office
Okay.
and cover that, because we're actually spending money on other than town property.
Right. Okay.
It's not a
That's not
problem.
a problem.
Questions? Other questions?
I'll move it.
Moved by Victor, seconded by Bob. Discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Before you go, Rich, there's a like to possibly add, if the board considers adding a small request again from the Open Space Commission for transfer out of open space into seasonal part-time, but we would need to add that to tonight's agenda if you so desire.
I'll add that, I'd like to add that to tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so this is, Jim, you can help me out on this. This was,
Yeah,
I guess,
basically,
on behalf of Rich and Ainsley, that transfer from open space, the $12,869, which is probably the rest of what's in the account.
right.
Going over to seasonal and part-time, $12,869, but I'll let you folks explain the need for this.
Yeah, essentially, as Richard alluded to on the item for 13-7 transfer, those funds were available out of the 26, I think 859 and change that was allocated to the Open Space Patrol. So that was a position that worked part-time for 12 months. In addition, they have a part-time and seasonal helpline. And Rich indicated that the Open Space Patrol person, Pete DeRoss, had passed away prior to the start of the fiscal year. So that position has not been filled. So no money is being charged to that account. The other person is working more hours. The part-time person is working more hours. So that account is going to need some money. So part of it was going to the project for the 13-7. And then the rest of it is going into the part-time wage account.
Thanks. And
Increased hours.
your commission is in favor of this request?
Yes, yes.
Questions?
I'll move it, Joe.
Moved by Jeff,
Second.
seconded by Harry. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thanks, Rich, you're all set.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next is to consider and authorize the finance director and the town treasurer to establish a brokerage account with GYL Synergies and Fidelity Investments for the purpose of liquidating securities acquired through the Dan Cosgrove Animal Shelter capital campaign. The suggested resolution would be resolved that the Board of Finance authorizes the finance director and treasurer to establish a brokerage account with GYL Financial Synergies and Fidelity Investments. Jim, you want to address this?
Sure. At the last meeting in November, Jamie and folks from the animal shelter were talking about the addition, and a key component of that effort was a capital campaign. Similar to the campaign which Blackstone Library had, they're soliciting donations from the community and folks in the area. And, one of the types of receipts that they will take are security. So if you had, let's say 100 shares of IBM that you wanted to donate to the animal shelter campaign, currently we don't have a way to convert that into cash. So we would have to basically, in that case, deposit it with a brokerage account, and then they would sell that and then issue a check to the town. It seemed a simple way is to basically piggyback off of GYL and Fidelity, because that is where our OPEB account is. And so this would be a way to basically convert any securities that are donated, and then we could funnel them to the animal shelter account.
So do we have any securities pending at this point?
No, this is really just being proactive. So when, because the campaign is started, so
Okay.
if we did receive one, I'd rather have us try to set it up and then we can receive them as opposed to kind of holding them, but.
And the signatories of the account would be treasurer and you?
Yeah,
Okay. And the first selectman?
yeah.
Okay. Questions?
I'll move it.
Second
Moved
it.
by Victor, seconded by
Harry.
Harry. Discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I apologize, we'll go back to number 6. I wasn't trying to save any money on this one. This is, number 6 is to hear a presentation from the Blackstone Library regarding the status of their renovation project. Hi, Karen.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is Polly Fitz. Polly is our new board president, so she's here with me tonight.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for having us on your agenda. And also thank you to the town of Branford for the renovation for the library. We are just about finished, and the whole project has gone, I think, beautifully well. It was expected to last a year, and it's a little bit over a year, but essentially it's complete. So we've added the addition, we've moved the children and teens down to their space. All of the interior is done, mostly, except for we ran into some problems with the rear roof repair at the end of the project. So that was scheduled to be completed by December, and this is a repair that we've known for quite a long time that the library has needed. And I gave you all a packet of information. The first page just gives you some answers to some questions that we thought you might have. The second page is a timeline of this roof problem. So you can see that it dates back to April 2010 when we first discovered a leak. Oops, sorry. At the rear of the building. So this leak shows up inside the room next to the auditorium stage, and even a little bit of the ceiling over the auditorium is starting to look like it has some damage. So as part of the renovation project, you'll remember that we decided to roll that roof repair into the project and have the contractor do it while they were there. So when they got to that point and they actually got into the roof, they just discovered that it was much more than we originally thought. So I'm not an architect or a builder, obviously, but the way it's constructed is terracotta over a steel structure. So the terracotta is crumbling, the steel is also crumbling and rusted. So the entire structure needs to be replaced. So where we are right now is we're waiting for the architect and the contractor to submit a proposal for how that work will be done and what it will cost. So there is still some money left in contingency. We're not sure what the project will cost. We anticipate it might be more than what we have left. We've already met with the State Historic Preservation Office. They came out and did a site visit, and we can apply for a grant of up to $100,000, which we will apply for, and that may help offset the cost. So I'm not asking for any money at this point, but just wanted to update you on where we are and what the situation is.
So what do you think the worst case is as far as range of dollars that?
I have no idea, but this grant through the State Historic Preservation Office is a matching grant, so they can give us up to $100,000. If they give us that, we would have to match it with $100,000. I don't know.
And how much is left in the project?
I don't know the exact number to that either.
I believe it's approximately around $140,000, Joe's left.
That's left?
Left in the project. The committee had met last month. They elected not to move forward with any. They kind of wrapped up all the contractual work at the time, have engaged the architect, and they did some further investigation as they wrapped up the project, correct? That was probably back in November or December.
Yes.
Opened it up, did some further investigation, took those pictures. They engaged the architect because of the unknown and how uncertainty of where the cost will come in, whether it's, $180,000 to $300 something. That's still unknown. So they thought it was best to pause, have the architect go through a plan and get some hard numbers together before they can make a decision. They, as Karen mentioned, this is falling in line with the state historical preservation. Is that SHPO, right?
Yes.
They had met with them. That's a rolling grant opportunity.
Yes.
Every month they award. So I think by the time, if needed, if it had to come back, they'll have some numbers in place, but also some news back from, they can apply for the grant at the same time, if needed to come back here, right? I think that's the intent.
Yes.
Questions from the board?
Well, are they
Karen,
gonna,
wait, sorry,
All right,
go
all right,
ahead.
let's go
Harry.
Harry, then Victor, and then
the
Shirley.
engineer's gonna work on the roof and that interior ceiling?
Yes.
Won't they look at the walls, because the water will
Well,
tend
yes.
to roll?
Yes, of course, of
And
course.
that may show up even later.
I think that we've determined that it's the roof that's causing the moisture problem on the walls.
Right, right. Okay.
Victor, you have a question?
Has there been anything done in the interim to protect the interior?
Yes, so they have closed it and sealed it for the winter so that it's weather tight temporarily.
Thanks.
Thanks. Charlie?
Karen, is there a request tonight to seek more funds to continue the investigation?
We're not requesting funds right
Okay,
now.
just like an
Just wanted to give you an update.
Okay, fine, good. That's
Because
all right.
it might take some time,
All
and
right.
I'm sure people are wondering.
At some point, could you send us a copy of the project accounting, I guess?
Sure.
The allocation of budget
Sure,
to actual and use of contingency, that sort of thing.
sure.
Joe, question?
Jeff, go ahead.
Karen, will this be like a two-part proposal where you're gonna have a repair for the outside roof and then the repairs for the inside walls and ceiling? You know, because I see the plaster's all off the walls behind the stage area,
Yes.
so that needs to be repaired.
Yes, that would be part of it.
It'll be all-inclusive.
Yes.
Yeah, all
Okay.
inclusive. Yeah. I mean, we could break it.
I understand you can break it up, but it's gonna be all-inclusive
Right.
of the total.
It'll be a
Okay,
fix.
thank you.
Karen, is Munger the construction company?
No,
No.
it's Downs Construction from New Britain.
Any other questions from the board? Comments, Jamie? You good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Polly and Karen. Thank you. Okay, where am I here? Next. Now we're on number 8. To consider and authorize the finance director and the town treasurer to open a federally insured investment account with Chelsea Groton Bank and to approve the following resolution, which I will read the proposed resolution. Resolve the Board of Finance authorizes the finance director and the town treasurer to open a federally insured investment account with Chelsea Groton Bank for an amount not to exceed $3 million. Jim?
Okay, as I outlined in my letter, myself, Catherine, Bob, and Charlie, we met with representatives of Chelsea Groton Bank, along with a gentleman from the Promontory Interfinancial Network, which is basically the ones that run the product, the Insured Cash Sweep, and the CDARS program. And so, we basically talked about the product. They gave us some examples. They showed us a sample statement, and also we looked at their call report and saw that the bank was profitable in the last quarter that we looked at. I've since looked at the December call report. They're still profitable. They represented to us that they have about 10 towns where they are the primary deposit institution, and roughly another 10 where they have relationships with.
And thanks, Jim. Comments from Charlie, Bob?
No, I thought we had a very productive meeting with them, so I would recommend them,
You're in favor of this?
yes.
And
Yeah, very, very strong institution, especially in the southeast there, well respected. I think we'll do well.
Okay. Somebody want to move this?
I'll second.
Second, Harry, you had
Yep.
a comment, a question? You're good? Motion's been made and seconded. Additional discussion? All in favor? Aye. Next is to hear a presentation by the Finance Director proposing the reduction of the existing debt authorization for the Main Street Gateway Project, $3.3 million, and to authorize funds for the Main Street Reconstruction Project, and if appropriate, act on behalf of the following proposed resolution. And I will read this draft resolution. Resolve that the resolution entitled Resolution Appropriating $2.7 million, $2,750,000 for Main Street Road and related improvements, and authorizing the issue of $2,750,000 worth of bonds of the town to meet and set appropriation and pending the issuance thereof, the making of temporary borrowings for such purposes be adopted and recommended for adoption by the representative town meeting. Welcome, John. How are you?
Great, how are you?
Good, good. Want to explain what?
Sure. So this project was kind of born in 2008. The Scenic Highway Gateway Plan that looked at the gateway to the town center from both the west side and the east side down Main Street. At a certain point in 2014, the town had sought lot SIP funding from the COG to actually get this project to fruition. That's just a reminder, the lot SIP program is a 100% grant for construction. Local funds have to go towards design. So that at fiscal year 15 was when those monies were appropriated for the project. At that point, a design engineer was brought on board and completed the design in 2017, working through community groups. From what I understand, I wasn't actually around for that, but working with the state, since the South Main Street is a state road, they got involved in design. So what kind of started off in your packet is that small circle kind of evolved into the large oval, which, as you can imagine, costs a lot more money than the original idea. So at that point, the project ballooned to about $5.3 million as opposed to $3.3, which is the original ask. Kind of looking at the design and using this lot SIP monies that's really meant for the community to use on local roads. We started getting into state road territory. We're spending money on state roads, so kind of made the decision that we should probably go a different route with this grant. And that's what we're asking for today, is to reallocate those funds to a new project that would be, again, the lot SIP program. So we've received approval through the COG for $2.5 million in construction costs, reallocating the money from the Gateway project. And then it would be estimated $250,000 in design. This would cover from South Main Street east through the center of town to just past Chestnut Street, where we've seen a lot of deterioration over the last really couple of years. It's deteriorated pretty quickly.
Question?
So I think the board has got a fair amount of questions. I'll start off with Victor.
We haven't seen a plan for this, drawings or anything like that?
No, we haven't proceeded with the design. We've come up with an engineer's estimate in my office. Essentially, the streetscapes that currently exist, the granite curbing, that'll essentially stay where it is. We'll do some rehabilitation as part of the project where bricks are deteriorated, granite curb needs to be reset, things like that. But the limits of the roadway would not change. Really what we're going for, since the street was reconstructed last about 1990, so 30 years, roadway life is really only about 20. You could even, just driving by today, you could see the part of the old trolley track that's within a couple inches of the pavement, the top of the pavement. that's all adding to really what you're seeing out there as far as the deterioration out there. Crosswalks are older, so those will all be replaced. We'll bring things into ADA compliance with the handicap ramps.
Is there sewers involved in this too, or not?
No, this is primarily pavement structure. One thing we did want to incorporate were permeable pavers, since there's actually not much drainage on Main Street. It's really on the ancillary roads going down the hill, Park, Hillside, things like that are carrying water away. So whatever we can do to kind of help that out.
Sorry, any beautification to the park there, that small park?
Tyler's Green?
No, we're coming the other direction.
You're coming the other
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're heading east, not west. That's what, getting back to when we first came before this body to request the funds for design, the intent was, although as John said, you know, typically you like to keep this money on local roads. However, we had this project, you have to use it on a collector, where identified as collector roads. So, the majority of the collector roads in town are probably, or a number of them are state roads. At the time, the previous engineer brought forward this project that was studied, as John said, back in 2008. We looked at this as a vehicle really to further the streetscape improvements from the intersection there, Laurel Street, down. We were hoping initially to get down to Kirkham Street through this. And then because it was a state road, you know, we were starting at that intersection, and then it just, this, you know, state starts to lead the design, and not saying that we were at odds, but you know, their objectives may be slightly different than what the towns were, right? So we're looking at pedestrian connections, then, you know, leveraging these funds for the streetscape improvements. They're looking more just for vehicular circulation, keep flow moving, and where it may be a safe way to do it with a traffic roundabout as designed, but it grew so large, as John stated, and I think in the picture you have in your packet, that I think it was really, it really didn't meet the objectives of the town at the time why we're initiating that. So then we ended up, you know, seeing if we can get these funds reallocated towards Main Street, which is, you know, a local road. It would be on the town to improve, and you can see the deterioration. The scope of the work would really be limited to what's there. There's, when you asked about if we have any plans, it's really not going to change in terms of, you know, a plan, but, you know, what needed to be developed are the specifications, and you know, redoing some crosswalks and things of that nature, bringing things up to ADA compliance, keeping the brick sidewalks and the granite curbing, but some have to be, you know, lifted again to address the transitions. You'll see some puddling as they have settled. So we see this as an opportunity to secure some funding, which we're just obligated for the design phase, and we'll secure this funding that really is federal funding flows through the state to the local municipality to be used on local infrastructure.
So this doesn't really address the issue of what the original circle was trying to, roundabout was trying to solve.
No,
It kind of just moves east of
we're just
that,
moving east of
right?
that.
And
You
so
know,
you still have that issue that's there.
it had initially gone, I think, from a $3 million project, or just over a $3 million project, up to $5.5 million.
Right.
And again, that's where it would be improvement. We'd be improving. There was still another $2 million we would have had to get for that project, plus increase our local share for the design to really improve state.
So on these low SIPs, what's our?
Lot SIP.
What's our lot SIP?
Lot
Used to be
SIP.
low SIP, now it's lot SIP.
No, there's two separate fundings. So there's low SIP and lot SIP.
Lot SIP, okay. What's our percentage that we're responsible for?
We pay for the design phase of the project, and then
That's it?
construction is 100%.
How much is the design phase?
We're estimating about, it's typically about 10% of the project, so 250,000.
And if in fact, I know there's some hesitancy on the board because this is kind of like new to us tonight, so you have to bear with us. What's the timing of this? Does this need to be addressed tonight, or can it be addressed?
We're hoping, because the state is looking for commitment to funds right now. We're looking for projects so they can commit to fund the projects. There's these lumps of money that are still sitting at the COG that we need to spend, so as not to appear like we don't need the money anymore as the regional council of government. So they're really looking for towns to bring those projects forward. Once we could secure the funding for the design phase, I'd feel comfortable kicking that to the COG and asking for the commit to fund from the DOT for the project. So we'd be looking, as soon as the funding were available, we can go out for an RFP for the design phase and bring someone on board for that.
So the way it works, there's about just over $40 million that gets to the state, comes into the state for this lot SIP program, and then that's spread across the different COGs. I think typically we probably, our COG receives around $7 million a year in lot SIP funding. The COG, and we're on the transportation committee, reviews applications, and then obviously for all the towns in the COG, there's not enough funding, the $7 million, to cover all the projects. So we then select projects. One thing amongst us and bring that to the full COG for their approval. So we've been able to secure, there's this money, and you may recall also the Meadow Street was a similar funding. So we'd like to get these projects moving in terms of, as John stated, if the COG isn't spending the money, the concern is then this will get, spent. Other COGs can take the money or request the money. I think all of us have gone down Main Street. You see the condition of it, and as John said, once it starts to deteriorate, that it increases quite rapidly as it gets further. Deterioration increases. We know there's some issues, not issues, but things we want to address in terms of the ADA compliance on some of the crosswalks as well as the signals. So those are things that need to be done. I think in the next couple of years. I don't see us going much longer than that. There's an opportunity for us to get this 100%, other than design, the construction, 100% funded. So that's why we ended up bringing this before. It's the first time you're hearing about it, and we recognize that. But coming out of our last COG meeting, when they were looking for projects and knowing that Branford is in the queue for a significant amount of money, we thought it was prudent to come before the board and ask for this. And have that money that was in the traffic circle reallocated this. Because we feel that this is a project we can move forward in a
If we
relatively
didn't
short.
have this money, Jamie,
Excuse me?
if we didn't have these dollars in front of us today and we had to do that repairs, what do you think the number would be?
You'd be still around the same, and
Well, I'm just saying it'd be more than 250,000, I guess is my point.
oh yeah. Yeah, you'd have the construction side, you'd still have to fund.
Does doing this eliminate the potential for the other projects to take place? The entrance to the town beautification, and I mean, is this replacing those? Are those projects dead now?
We have the preliminary engineering on all of that. They haven't gone through to final engineering, but I mean, that's still a viable project. It's just at this time, I think the priority is to get Main Street done.
I can understand the merits of
Yeah.
what you're presenting, but I just want to know that the others are still alive or potential for getting done. So,
I don't know if he's saying that. I think that if in fact they fund this, they wouldn't necessarily, you'd have to wait and reapply for for funding on anything else, correct?
For the, you're talking about like
the gateway project.
the gateway project,
Yes.
right? So we would have to secure
Yeah,
funding
start
for
over.
that. As getting back to, we viewed the traffic roundabout that was being proposed, this will be replacing as the first phase and kind of continuing that gateway, or starting that gateway project. As the town did that study in 2008, and I'm not aware of anything that had come out of that study that the town had moved forward on. So when we, basically took that off the shelf, we said, okay, let's start. Initially, like I said, we were hoping to get from Laurel Street down to Kirkham. And you could see, then that kept coming back. Then it was Laurel to Cedar, and then it was basically a lot of the improvements right down. Then it got down to the circle, which then increased it, like I said, from a $3 million to a $5.5 million project. So right now, we are not moving forward with that project. And any other improvements that we'd have to seek funding.
Okay.
So
thank you.
that $5 million project would have cost us about $500,000.
Yeah, well, we would be in design, yes, we would still have
Net,
to
if it's
secure.
the 10%.
Right, it was right around 500,000.
So do you see that coming, I mean, how do you think you're going to resolve that traffic issue, or do you think that's not an issue?
I think that the state had at one point looked at a traffic signal there, but, and that was what they were trying to do with the traffic circle. I think you might have an opportunity to get the state maybe to come to the table, to try to improve that, maybe with the town. But to use up the $5 million of that's grant monies that really should be used on local roads.
I think that's what we need. I mean, we did some preliminary design, we have something, we worked with DOT, and at the end of the day, it is, we would have been using funds that should be used on local roads for a state road. I think there's other funding sources that are for state roads, which again they could probably pick up where that plan and go from there. But to use up that amount of money that should be going towards local roads, is the decision that we made to continue. And that really not only from the town of Brantford, but really the COG's position was really that that these funds should be used on local roads. So when we first asked for the $3 million, that was something that was discussed. This is really a state road. Should there be, should we go to the state? Are there other funding sources and not use which should be local road on this? So then once it ballooned up to over $5.5 million and became a real
An issue.
and just the size of the thing itself, was rather than being a connection of this Main Street, everything from the 4th Ward up to the Green, you look on it, it was almost becoming a I don't want to say divider point, but it really was quite large and imposing. It took up quite a bit of area. I mean, it went in, I don't know if you saw it on the drawing there, but, and quite honestly, even with that design, there's some other access issues to the theater property and that would have had to been addressed, that still weren't addressed in part of that.
Charlie, got a question?
Yeah, I just want to back up a bit, Jamie, but the picture in the handout, that's the older version or concept of the roundabout. Is that correct?
Right, the 2008, the initial concept is the CHE.
That's the new
This is
one.
the old one is this one here, which just shows a little
Okay, but
circle.
doesn't the new one look like a tremendous footprint on our town?
Well, that's what it would have been,
That's
yes.
what he's saying.
So is this the old one?
Yeah.
No,
That was the revised, the original one was that little
Yes,
circle.
okay.
This is the revised, and they're saying they don't want to do that.
Right.
They're going to move.
It's much too big for the town.
big,
in
right.
my opinion.
right.
Okay. No, I just wanted to clear that in my head.
Sure. Jeff, go ahead.
So, I do a lot of walking in the center of town, and I will agree that there's a lot of deterioration that needs to be addressed. Couple concerns. I know we talked about sewer lines down in the lower part of Main Street. Would those be addressed in this project, or is that something separate? Since we're doing some redevelopment, would we, fix those pipes? And also by Harrison Avenue, I know there's a lot of congestion there based on buses stopping and pedestrian crossing. Would we open that up in this project? Would you look at the congestion there? Those are some of the concerns that I have as I see working my way through the center of town.
Yeah, that'd be something we'd work with the design engineer, make sure we meet with the as many folks as we can that are both business owners and residents, public meetings to try to identify and then try to address some of those issues. At this point, we're kind of looking more at the estimate and kind of the scope of work as opposed to, any future rehabilitation of any of those congestion issues. That would kind of come further along as we start digging into design and looking at traffic patterns. And
Well, you don't want to allocate money, then we have to go back and make a fix after we've spent $2 million. I mean, I think we would incorporate it in the project, especially if you had to move a curb back a little bit, you're right there.
Well, I think what John's saying, those issues, you're right, and I think we recognize, and those come out during the design, we're not even, this is just to get
So they're
approval
concerns
to-
that would be on the table, so as
Right.
you're designing it, you would have them
public
addressed.
outreach and design would address all of those.
How about those sewer lines down there, Jamie, down by Lockworks that we've had some issues with? Would those be evaluated and replaced if need be, or?
is it Rosebrook?
Yeah,
through
Rose
the-
coming around, the
Right.
backside, which we know, we've been.
They've been stated before by
Yeah.
the plant manager down that there's issues there.
Right.
How does that get incorporated or repaired while we're in a building phase or in a construction phase there?
Right. Anything that falls, say, under Main Street, we can incorporate into the project. But one of the criteria for the Lot SIP grant program is that it's really primarily for roads. So any of those storm sewers that run through
That would be on
Lockworks
us.
or down, that would be ineligible for the project, for the funding.
Again, I'm just trying to project some foresight rather than hindsight as we're going out and doing this. I mean, I agree there's deterioration and there's puddling and, the ADA improvements. I think even the Traffic Commission approved audible crosswalk
Right.
that haven't been put in yet. And I think they're in the right up here that you're going to install them at this point.
Right. But I think, and we just did it was back in the fall, we did a couple of appropriations for the sewer infrastructure, and we know we're evaluating that and identifying a number of areas. There's a whole, the maintenance and replacement of areas that we're doing.
Right.
So, coming around Rose Street into Main Street, I know that's always been a problem area, and we'll have to see, what falls within this area that's going to be impacted.
I understand it's
We don't
probably
want to get
something
into a
that's outside of-
situation where, we all of a sudden we do a road and then a utility comes through and they
I
cut
get
it
it.
all up.
Sometimes you
Right,
don't.
right.
Just trying to, again,
Yeah, no,
not have tunnel vision and look
Yeah.
a little bit forward.
No,
So, I know Charlie has another question.
another question.
Yep, okay, we'll get to you.
So the request tonight, Jamie, is for some design funds that are available from LoTIP, and if they're available now, we should grab them before some other town grabs them. Is that the request?
I would say, yeah, that's the law.
Okay.
We have an appropriation authorization in place for a project that is no longer going to move
All right, I get
forward,
that.
which is the large footprint that you referenced there.
All right.
So the board authorized that funding for design work to do that project. That's no longer going to move forward for all the reasons stated. So we'd like to have that allocated or authorized for a local road, Main Street, which is, we feel is going to be in need of repair. Or
I mean, the opportunity is now.
The opportunity is there.
Okay,
put in place.
I get it.
Harry, you had a question?
Yeah, under the section on the estimate on the roadway, what's the length? Is it a quarter of a mile of paving? Of half a mile? I can't delineate by what's there, because you got earth excavation. Every number under there is different.
Yeah, we're given a copy of
This.
the draft
Yeah, this-
sheet.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the distance would be. You're essentially running from Lockworks Square to where South Main.
This is about 900,000 total.
Well, probably
On
in
the
square
roadway.
yards, right?
Yeah, it's going to tell.
First phase, we already spent the
Well, I could get you the exact distance, but that's where it's from. It's going from.
Well, I know it says from South Main to Chestnut.
You know, but the opportunity.
No, it's going to,
Yep, South Main to just past
yes,
Chestnut
yes,
Street.
yes.
So all through the center of town, where the state road comes in
Yeah.
and kind
All right, Harry.
of dives off, yeah.
You're back in the seat. Okay. So the question, just to follow up with finishing Harry's question so we can all hear it. Do you want to address it?
You want to know the exact length,
Right.
and it goes from where South Main meets Main, in Main Street, come together, down to Chestnut Street at the bottom of the,
It's like Shoreline Cafe.
Where
geez,
Shoreline
right there,
Cafe
right.
is. So I don't have the exact distance of that, but we have the quantities in terms of
So
tonnage.
it's what, a quarter mile, eighth of a mile?
Well, that's what he described.
They'll figure it out. I got it. And if your drop dead date for this application is when?
They want them like last month. So they want, and we did have a project line at Meadow Street was kind of lined up, which I believe was going to be in the next budget cycle. We were going to ask for the appropriation for the grant funding for that. But we're going to push that back as Main Street has really become the priority, especially since we don't know what's going on with the development on Meadow Street.
What is the, I mean, if you didn't approve it tonight and it got moved out another couple months, it would just probably delay our spot in the queue. And again, it's, I don't know, is there something that the board is, would like prior to making a decision?
Any other information that we request? I know that there's kind of early, I mean, this is the first we've really had the details on the change. We are swapping the debt, basically the authorization.
Yeah, it's there.
How much is that again, Jamie, that you're asking?
200,
Right.
The original authorization was, what, 3.3? Yes. So it's actually authorizing a reduction. Now, you've already spent some money?
Yeah, basically, the mechanics of it are, you had authorized 3.3 for the original Gateway Small Circle project, and now we're looking at $2,750,000. Now, we've already spent roughly $70,000 of our local $300,000 share. That's the 10%. And additionally, we issued approximately, I believe it was $275,000 in bonds. So roughly $205,000 of bond proceeds is available and is getting transferred, if you approve it tonight, and the RTM does following this, for this project, which would leave just under, which would leave a small amount that we'd have to actually bond finance to complete it, which we would have done anyway with the 3.3 million, because we didn't bond the whole 300,000 local share.
Right.
I thought we had to spend some money on conceptual design.
Well, that's
That's part of the 70,000, I believe, right?
That was the conceptual design for
Yeah.
the roundabout.
Yeah.
Right.
But the clock starts again on this project for the 10%.
Well, it's the design fee. We're obligated to cover the design. The project's estimated at a $2.5 million project. So, which there's a funding source. The state will fund them, $2.5 million. However, we need to do the design work, which is, so we're estimating 10%, $250,000. So basically, if we, go through the design phase, if we design a project, which we anticipate we need roughly $250,000 to do, and address the road reconstruction, the concerns that you stated, Jeff, in regards to congestion and the ADA issues and signaling that the police and traffic commission identified, we design to address all of that. The state will pay, the funding will flow through the state, through our COG, for the actual construction to address all of those things that we identified. From that section, from the South Main Street, Main Street to Chestnut Street.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with it because we've already allocated the dollars.
Yeah, we've allocated the money.
So I'll move it.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Robert, seconded by Victor. Additional discussion?
What if we go ahead and move this tonight, when does this start? I mean, you think spring or?
Yeah, but as soon as the RTM would approve it, then we would go out for the RFP to bring a consultant on board and start it up.
And then we have to apply, get the commit to fund from the state, which they would have to review it as well. So, but we need to have this in
Hey,
place.
Jamie, would that be a prerequisite of going forward?
For commit to fund? Yeah.
I mean, getting the fund, the acceptance by the state?
Right, we would move
Yes,
forward
yes,
unless it's
right.
totally approved.
So we need to move forward before.
Jeff, you had another
No,
question?
Bobby handled it, I'm good.
Okay, are there any other discussion or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, next is to hear a presentation from the First Selectman, Director of Finance, and Director of Human Resources with regards to medical benefits, costs, and opportunities. Jim was kind enough, after much discussion that over the past month or so with myself and others, to draft an overview of the possibility of reviewing the OPEB and medical insurance opportunities. And after tonight, I'd like to also sit down with a couple board members in order to review this a little more thoroughly. But for now, Jim, you want to kick off the presentation, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, I think that's fine. There could be a lot of stuff to unpack here, so we'll give it a good shot. And you have the memo as a basis, so I think that's a good start. What we want to talk to you about really encompasses a lot of areas of town government. As you know, the town of Branford currently is self-insured for the medical benefit program. We also have an other post-employment benefit trust. What those two share in common is that they are financing mechanisms to provide contractual benefits in the health sphere to our employees. And one of the things we've been looking at over the past year, a year ago, January, I was here and we were talking about moving some of those assets from the medical self-insurance fund to the OPEB trust and some of the benefits of that. Recently, we were looking at our projected medical costs back in December for the upcoming fiscal year. We do this every year. It's a meeting with so it's Selectmen, HR, myself, our counterparts at the Board of Ed, along with our medical consultants, to try to really get a handle on what's going on in the market and what's going on with our claims. And one of the things we've done in the past, and again this year, is we look at potential alternatives. So part of the efforts this year is marketing the stop-loss coverage, which is a key component of the self-insurance program. Just by way of review, the stop-loss is an area that kicks in after the town has spent a certain amount of dollars. So, for example, if we have a claim that was $200,000 and we have an individual stop-loss of $150,000, anything over $150,000 would be picked up by that individual stop-loss. And then there's also, on a much smaller fee, is an aggregate stop-loss. So if your claims go up, let's just say more than 120% of expected, from 121% forward, that would be included by the aggregate stop-loss. It's not a small, it's a significant dollar amount, but the majority of these costs are still driven by their claims. I think the underlying point to take home with that discussion is that the town of Branford looks at these things along with the Board of Education, and we look for ways to reduce the cost. One of the things we looked at again this year is the state of Connecticut's partnership plan. When we had looked at it, I think it was like 2 years ago, we had seen a lot of communities that started looking at the partnership plan, closing self-insurance funds and going into the state partnership plan. At that time, I believe there was about 11,000 covered lives. Now the partnership plan is in excess of 20,000 covered lives. So when we were looking at, how would that look if we were to go into the partnership plan? And the other thing to remember too is partnership is a very large pool. And one of the elements of risk management is pooling of risk. So if you have a larger pool, your pool should have less volatility. So in other words, it's going to go up and down, but the range should be tighter than if you have a smaller pool. And the pools that we look at in the town of Branford, the Board of Ed's in a separate pool and the town's in a separate pool. So the town pool, as you might deduce, is a smaller pool, so it ends up being more volatile. A couple of years ago, we were looking at a 34% increase in the allocated rates that employees paid, just because of the way that the pool was operating. So one of the things we were thinking of, is there a way to sort of reduce that volatility and actually do it to save dollars? And again, it's not always about saving money, but in this case, it's kind of a win-win, because our initial look at this is that if the town saves money, the employees save money. And I think it's important to remember that the overall objective in this, anyway, in its most basic level, is to provide, as I said at the beginning, health benefits to the employees so we could retain and attract good candidates for our positions, and yet do it in a way that's sensitive to the taxpayer. And sometimes what that involves is a change in philosophy. Now, what do I mean by when I say a change in philosophy? Well, I remember some years back, and even before that, we were looking at self-insurance. When I came here from the city of Norwalk, I was very comfortable with self-insurance. It was something the city of Norwalk had done. In fact, you remember the early years when we were looking at that?
Yes.
And the thinking there was, which made a lot of sense at the time, we were looking at, what are we actually paying in premiums, and what are we actually looking at in claims? And we also recognize that when you buy insurance, in this case it was Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, who at that time controlled the vast majority of the municipal market. There wasn't a lot of competition out there, so your options were basically Anthem for the most part, or self-insured. I think it's important to remember that when you buy insurance, you're essentially trading dollars with the insurance company, and you're transferring the risk. So the insurance company takes the risk, but they're charging you a rate to cover what they expect your cost to be, plus their overhead, plus the taxes they have to pay, both premium tax and income tax, and profit to their shareholders. So we were looking at it like, is there a way that we can do this at the time cheaper? And also, if we do have favorable experience, those dollars would actually flow into the self-insurance fund, and they would be assets of the town and then direct assets of the taxpayers. And that's essentially what we did. We started out with dental, then prescription, and then we went fully insured on the medical side. And that's been a good track record. The fund has grown over the years. We'll probably end fiscal 19 at roughly 13.4. We still have to get through this year, of course, so that balance could change depending on the experience through the year. But we also have an ability now to, as I said earlier, is to transfer that risk at a savings to the town, and that would be looking at the state partnership plan. Now, one of the concerns or one of the observations with the state partnership plan is unlike our audit report, you could easily find it, right? You could look to the back of the audit report, you could see what our balance is. It's a lot more difficult, if not impossible, to kind of find out that information. What I thought was interesting was last March, one of the state reps had written a letter to the controller asking about the experience of the partnership plan. And one of the paragraphs in the controller's response was that happy to talk about the experience of the fund, but under no statutory requirement to report the experience of the fund. So I think philosophically, when we look at these things, you have to kind of take a little bit of a leap of faith that the state is pricing their product correctly. I mean, to try to make an efficient decision here, you have to make sure that that premium that you're being charged is being priced correctly. And so that, but again, I think philosophically, the idea of going away from the self-insurance potentially to the partnership plan is quite honestly, it's a radical shift from our thinking over the years. Some other things when I talked about the pool is that now there are other avenues available to the town workforce. Over the years in negotiations, like for example, we know that the IAFF, the International Association of Firefighters, has a health plan, and they can offer that to our firefighters. I know, and my experience with some of the negotiations over the years, that plan has been looked at. That plan at times has been proposed. So there is some pressure even on the town's pool of organized groups looking to kind of get out. Blackstone Library, they were here earlier, they used to be part of the pool. They're no longer part of the pool. One of the bargaining units switched to the Teamsters unit. The Teamsters also have a fund, and I fully anticipate that they will want to propose their health benefit fund for that workforce. So you can see that going forward and looking out in the crystal ball, that even kind of keeping the coalition of folks together on the town fund is going to be challenging. And so if that were to occur, then that pool would shrink even more, and of course then it would become more volatile. And that's not what we want to happen. You know, when we look at some of our other funding, whether it's our debt planning, whether it's our capital planning, you know, we try to limit those swings or bumps in cost. And we view the partnership plan as providing, at this juncture in our work, as a viable alternative to the self-insurance. So then the question becomes, well, what do we do with the self-insurance fund? Now, if you're really concerned about where the state's at or where the state could go, you want one avenue, which is sort of a hedging strategy, is that you would carve out a component of the benefits. So for example, if you were to carve out the dental piece, then you'd have a reason to keep your insurance fund open, because you'd have an insurable interest in the dental side. Absent that, I think down the road it's going to be a tough road with the auditors, because then we're going to have money in this fund that doesn't provide the purpose. So it's an internal service fund that is not providing an internal service. So I think that would be problematic. So that's one way to kind of hedge on this. Other ways we kind of looked at hedging this is we looked at, okay, if our savings is X in year one, and the partnership priced differently than the town's plan, so let's say the partnership was to price more aggressively, higher rates in the future than the town's, you know, where's that break-even point? How many years out is there a break-even point? So, you know, so we've looked at that as well. The other thing to think about, and you know, arguably you might be able to do this anyway, but is what is a good use of the assets now in the medical self-insurance fund if you substantially transferred the risk to the partnership plan. And one of the things that we've talked about, and our policy says that we would eventually get there, is that we would strive, as we have with pensions, to fund, to get to a point where we were 100% funded. So on the OPEB side, if you go by the last analysis, we're about 6.8 million short. And that is using a return assumption of 6.5%. So basically looking at future liabilities, discounting them by 6.5%, we would need about 6.7 million. As I said earlier, that we're probably going to end the year 13 and change. So we have an opportunity to, instead of saying we're going to fund that liability over a 30-year period, in which we're probably in year 27 now, what if we wanted to eliminate it entirely? What would it cost to eliminate it entirely? So at 6.5%, it would cost about 6.7 million. If we lower that return assumption, I've laid out a couple scenarios where you could actually use a lower return assumption, which means you would take less risk because your portfolio would be geared towards a lower rate of return, and still wipe out that liability. Well, what does that mean for future budgets? Well, one of the things you may recall that when we're budgeting these accounts, a chunk of that is for the unfunded accrued liability. Well, if you actually were to wipe it out, you wouldn't have an unfunded accrued liability. So that mortgage with 27 years left on it, on the 6.7 million, goes away. So that's a piece now that you wouldn't be taxing for. I also recognize that dumping a large amount of money into the OPEB trust and all of the risks associated with the investments that are in the trust, may give one some pause. So I think as another hedging risk management tool, what we might consider is, if we did that, is to keep it in the trust but not funnel all that money to the custodian. So in other words, when the folks are doing their investment presentation, those dollars would not be in their pool to invest, but they would be in the trust. So we would be getting some of the actuarial benefits of it and yet trying to hedge on our risk. Now, having a larger cash position like that also warrants, I think, lowering the return assumptions too, which I talked about earlier. So that's another aspect to think about in terms of what some of our opportunities are. Administratively, we would eventually, once run-out claims got paid out, we would not be essentially running the insurance company, except perhaps possibly for dental if we decided to go that route. The other aspect of this, which makes it easier and more efficient, is that in trying to determine what our OPEB spend is on an annual basis and basically pulling out retirees from an overall census of medical costs, the partnership plan makes it relatively simple. They send you a separate bill for your retirees. So now, as opposed to going into this and asking the Board of Ed to kind of pull out their claims, we could essentially say, okay, how much did the trust pay for medical costs for retirees? They would basically pay the premiums. The trust would be paying the premiums to the partnership plan. And so both the town and the Board of Ed would be paying those bills out of the trust for that, which is, from an administrative end of this, seems to make a lot of sense, and it makes our actuarial numbers more accurate because we're actually getting, we actually know what that is, and then they could sort of assess the experience of the partnership plan as best as they could with the limited information, and look at our costs that way. And that could potentially, I say potentially because we don't know for sure, but could potentially also lower our normal costs in the future because it's looking at the experience of the fund and not just us. So I could talk more about this. There's other aspects of this that we've looked at. The reason I think it's important to talk now is because as we're evaluating this, we recognize that if we want to start to go to that progression, we don't want to be way ahead of folks like yourself who are going to have to make budget decisions depending on where we end up in the budget process. I honestly can't say if that's going to be an adjustment that comes through when you make your recommendations in March. Depending where we're at in the process, it might be something that we ask the RTM to do. So, but I do think when you kind of look at it, you take a step back and you identify what your objectives are and what you want to do to meet those objectives. Again, our objective is to have a fully funded OPEB plan, and our objective is to provide a cost-effective, attractive benefit plan to our employees, and to do it with less volatility. And I do think that this, at the present juncture, provides an opportunity to do that. It's going to result in moving dollars. It's going to result in a philosophical shift.
Jim, if we were to briefly summarize this, you did a good job in the letter, although you really didn't touch on it so much, is that the opportunity here is to save fairly substantial monies on an annual budgetary basis of maybe up to $1 million a year or something to that effect.
Yeah, and again, the numbers are moving, but somewhere in that range of $1 million, maybe 750-ish.
So let's say it's close to $1 million worth of budgetary savings.
Yeah.
And then also have the opportunity to reallocate funds that are in the trust fund in order to pay off the OPEB, which would then reduce or eliminate the unfunded liability, and again reduce budgetary costs, and then still have monies remaining in the trust if need be.
Yes.
So it seems like a win-win, and it also addresses the other risks that Jim mentioned with regards to the participants who may be moving to other opportunities. So it seems like, and though that we have probably a lot of questions, that's why I thought that we could have a follow-up meeting with maybe Charlie and Victor and myself and Jim and folks at the administration, that it kind of gets a little more detail in advance of the budget session, so that and it's going to take some time for this to play out with employees and with other types of approval processes.
Yeah, and maybe Margaret could speak to that, because we did have a meeting with employee reps on this.
Okay.
And again, we have to, earn their trust, and we have to, again, bring them to where we're at.
So it's an introductory type of discussion tonight, although we've had the discussions in the past. It seems like from our responsibility as well is to look at, is there opportunity here that we need to look at very seriously. So Margaret, do you have something else you wanted to add?
One of the major factors right now is that, of course, we're with Anthem on the self-insured side. Anthem will also be now the insurer for the partnership plan effective July 1st. So this creates a smoother transition discussion between the employee and us. We are having our second meeting tomorrow with a smaller group of employees to get the word out that the benefit risks of moving to the partnership plan will be a more benefit-rich program for the employee. We project at a less cost. Now, we don't know exactly what those costs are yet, because the Anthem has not proposed them in the state. We expect them probably in the next couple of months, I would think. But we are going to have to move fast, so we're trying to prepare our employees now for the potential for it to change and get their questions and concerns out there so that we then can address them as best we can.
Charlie, you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jim, how do we know the state plan will accept our town? Because the first thing your board ought to do is look at our loss runs. And if the loss runs are horrendous, can't they say, no, you're not coming in?
They could. My understanding is that if you go in as a whole town, they accept you. They don't reject you. If you are basically saying this group can go in, but this group it doesn't, let's just say we said, okay, the Parks and Rec Union's going in, but nobody else is. Well, they could reject that. And there have been cases because I asked the same question of our medical consultants. Has anybody been turned down by the partnership plan? And there are cases where people have been turned down. So, it's quite possible that, we may hit some bumps in the road. And again, I think that's a question that's been asked. I'm glad you asked me, because that's a point that I think.
So you're saying the state could cherry pick our unions and say we just want the low loss runs of these unions?
I think they're more concerned of us cherry picking to them, actually, quite honestly, is what they're more worried about.
As explained by the medical consultant, if the town side as a whole went in, they would take the town. If we were to select which groups we wanted to go, then they have the right to reject. Because they don't want municipalities cherry picking who they're sending off to the state.
So couldn't our union say we don't want to join?
That's more of a labor question. Yes, in theory, anybody could say anything, and then until it gets challenged. And my understanding, and again, I'm not an expert on labor law, is that is what we're offering comparable to what's being offered today? And the argument that our medical consultants and others might make is, if you look at the value of the two plans, there's like an actuarial value of the two plans, the partnership plan has a greater value. So now again, having said that, it's a change for everybody. So I have an HSA, so I kind of got used to the HSA. That was the model, and it's still a good model. Absent the partnership plan, we would probably still be doing this. The reason we're considering changing is to save money and provide a richer plan, and then looking at the two funds together and seeing, are there other opportunities? As Joe did summarize, yes, there are opportunities as it relates to OPEB and the savings going forward when you get rid of that unfunded accrued liability. Now, you may only get rid of it for a short period of time. You could have investment losses, so your funded ratio drops again. Mortality changes could occur. There could be other things that drive that. But the bottom line is we would be substantially better funded in OPEB than we are now, which is a very well-funded trust comparative to other communities.
So, Jim, there's a question here. One of your bullet points was you talked to the rating agency, and they said that they was generally viewed favorable. However, they acknowledge they must also consider impact on the state. I didn't quite.
Yeah, basically, I was down at a municipal forum at Standard & Poor's a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about budget drivers, and one of them was health benefit. And so the guy I was sitting with was a senior analyst there. I said, well, what's your opinion on municipalities going from self-insurance going into the state pool, because we would be actually saving money? And he said, yeah. I said, well, that's good for you, but and I kind of thought, well, somebody's taking the risk, right? If we're transferring the risk, somebody's getting it. And so he basically said, but they would also be looking at the state pool. As the state pool is growing, they're also going to be
just in general, not specific to
yeah, just in general. Although he did like the idea of basically getting rid of the OPEB liability.
Yeah.
He was like, "Can you really do that?" I said,
Right.
"I said, yeah." I said we could. So,
Charlie, one more question.
Yeah, one more. And so in the narrative, you also said we could try it. If we don't like it, we can get out. I don't think you can get out once you get in.
well, you could always
Losses are going to be such you can't afford to get out.
You'd have to buy your way out. I mean, you have a
Yeah, but
tail.
that's-
Just
Well,
like
I mean,
we had
after-
to do the same thing before we self-insured.
yeah. I mean, after a couple of years, you can get out, right?
Well, you got the money, you can get out, yeah.
Well, all right. So let's see where that road takes us, right? So yes, if you have the money, you can get out, right? But if you really think about it, you're going to be in the plan for a couple of years. So let's say you made this decision to go to the partnership plan. And let's say next year the experience in the partnership plan isn't good. Well, would you make a move on 1 year?
Probably
Maybe not. Because, what's your objective again? So if your objective is to transfer the risk and have something that's less volatile, you'd want to wait to see a year or two, right? And at that point, you may start regressing to your average, and you'd probably be okay with it. The other thing, if you went all in, so you didn't have the dental hedge that we talked about before, so you went all in. So let's just say, for argument, at that point in time, the annual claims are 17 million, okay? So if you wanted to start up the self-insurance again, you'd have to say, okay, what are my risks? Well, you'd have to buy the individual stop loss again, right? And you'd have the aggregate risk, right? So what would you budget as a percent of claims? If you wanted to budget 100% of claims, like we've been doing in the recent years, you'd say, well, what happens if it's more than 100% of claims? So you'd almost have to know when you're in the grocery aisle and you get asked about fund balance on the general fund, you might say, well, yeah, but, now that we're with the partnership plan, we want to go back to self-insurance, we really should keep a good 20% of our fund balance available, because we might have to take that out to jumpstart the self-insurance fund again.
Yeah, but you got to pay the tail, plus you got to fund the reserves.
Well, you'd have to fund the reserves, right? I'm not sure if you'd pay the tail if you sort of transferred the risk to the
Well, if
partnership.
you're getting out, you got to pay the tail.
Yeah, now we're still going to keep money in for the run-out claims. So if we switch to the partnership plan on July 1, yes, we would have run-out claims. And that money would stay in a self-insurance fund. And there would be enough in there to cover run-out claims and even do the OPEB transfer. So, but yeah, no, I actually mentioned in the letter about, the fact that we would have to keep money in there.
Yeah, and these are the things that we want to look
Yeah.
through, but again, there was an introductory discussion.
No, there's no tail in the partnership because we already transferred that risk.
Yeah, it'd be fully insured with the
Yeah.
partnership.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Jamie, anything else you wanted to add on this one? You're good? Any other questions on the partnership discussion, folks? So before we adjourn, I was just going to ask Lisa to make a few comments with regards to a collection effort that she's orchestrating out of the town clerk's office with regards to Feed Branford Kids. Lisa?
Thanks. So to supplement the great work that Feed Branford Kids is doing, I started a collection this month to enhance their efforts, and I was shocked at the numbers that I learned, that 34% of Branford children are either on a no-cost lunch program or a reduced-cost lunch program. And so Feed Branford Kids supplements those kids with food for the weekends and the holidays. So they have a weekly effort where they collate the food into individual bags for the students. It's completely confidential, and the social workers at the grammar schools are collaborative efforts with Feed Branford Kids, and so it's completely confidential. So what I'm doing is collecting non-perishable, single-serving, shelf-stable items. They could range from snacks, anything that doesn't have nuts or peanut butter, by the way, and single-serving. It could be individual envelopes of oatmeal to individual bags of chips, etc. So there's a collection box in my office at Town Hall to make it easy for folks to bring in their items, and then the Feed Branford Kids folks pick them up weekly. So just a shout out to the great work that they're doing and supplementing their efforts.
Thanks, Lisa, for that information.
Thank you.
Okay. And with no other business to come before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.